I call Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, tēnā koutou, ngā manuhiri, katoa o te motu mai te whare. He mihi nui ki Waitaha whānau hapu me iwi in the second reading of the Waitaha Settlement Bill. And it is our privilege to debate the second reading with no opposition to the redress proposed. Last night, Mr. Speaker, tears of joy and loud acclamation filled this House. Today, a quieter but as deeply felt sense of justice permeates the kōrero. This process is so fundamental to our nation that I do wish the gallery was as full as it was last night. Every part of the whenua, ngā maunga, ngā moana, ngā awa of Aotearoa is part of the rangatiratanga of the tangata whenua, and this negotiation under Te Treaty o Waitangi is lifelong for all of us. The form of the dialogue may change, but it will always continue. The Green Party wants to acknowledge Ngā Tupuna o Waitaha and the iwi hapu and whānau today who have worked so hard to get to this point. And they have some key objectives in their negotiations, which is to restore the mana and identity of Waitaha and of their tupuna, Hakaraia, correct the history of Waitaha, and provide a foundation for the ongoing development of Waitaha through cultural revitalisation, social enhancement, and economic and political participation. And the Green Party says tautoko to that. Those key objectives need to be met as fully as they can be. Clearly, along the road, the Select Committee did some really good work, as did Waitaha and the Minister, in negotiating the overlapping claims around the maunga. It's obviously a very challenging issue, but some major progress was made around joint cultural redress, and the vesting of the peaks of Ōtane Wainoko Pu Whenua to the iwi of Tauranga Moana, Te Arawa and Waitaha is an important change that has happened during this process, and it does express great generosity when an iwi is prepared to go through that process. It's not new, it's always been like this in Aotearoa, but it's worth noting and acknowledging. It is also important to acknowledge the Waitaha people whom I have met personally in the issue around the mining of Muir's Peak, Newmont Gold and Glassearth's attempt to mine Muir's Peak, and I met then with some Waitaha people who laid out very clearly their passion for their maunga down to the ocean, their passion for preserving their waterways and protecting the area from mining, and it was very humbling to have met those people, and I want to acknowledge them. It is important to acknowledge that Waitaha bore the brunt of the colonisation in their rohe, and that the story of Hakaraia Mahika needs to be widely told and widely understood. A number of other MPs, Mr. Speaker, in this House have called for a parallel education process alongside these settlements so that Pākehā and Tauri katoa in a rohe such as the Waitaha can be educated and can reassess the place where they live. The degree of ignorance amongst some of us cannot be underestimated or overestimated, actually. For the renaissance of Waitaha to thrive, we need to pass this bill, but that was only one part of the job. We, and I'm speaking as a Pākehā, need to move with tangata whenua so that we cease to be a barrier to the aspirations and rights and dreams of Ngā Uri o Hakaraia Mahika. So the cultural aspects of the settlement are important, so is the wero, that it is time for all of us to learn the truth of history. Now, I've been a Te Treaty educator for nearly 20 years, and I'm still a learner of the basics and a learner of the fundamental stories. Looking at our education, many of us were taught nothing at all about raupatu. We were taught migration myths, we learned so-called stick games and waiata without context. Nowadays, supposedly there's a better education, but at the same time there is still ignorance and a tendency for the presentation of Te Treaty o Waitangi to be part of a history class for the few at senior secondary level who choose to study history. It is not history, it is both history and now. And that tendency is for teachers to avoid the controversial issues, the truth of raupatu, the truth of racism, the truth of privilege and colonisation, because it's painful. Of course it's painful. We all understand that. It's very, very painful, but it's actually very, very empowering when we come to grips with it and can move forward as allies in that process. So that's why education needs to be parallel with treaty settlement. If the Waitaha Treaty Settlement Bill is to meet its potential, and the meaning of the Treaty of Waitangi is to live in full, it is about the present relationships based on all the cultures embracing the colonisation history, and through understanding the pain and loss and how some of us have benefited, Pākehā can be those allies and supporters, and that is vital. And we believe that's nowhere more important than the rohi of Waitaha, where the history and the story is virtually invisibilised, and maybe through this process will become visible to more people. That would be a great benefit if it was visible and understood. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to address the reason why much the annoyance of the Minister of the Green Party talks about treaty settlements in relation to deals. It is not to disrespect any of the processes and, in fact, the fantastic journey that people take. It is to acknowledge that we are not able to provide full redress through the Parliament. If somebody stole my car and then offered to give it back to me, and I first had to prove that the hubcap, which was all I was getting back, even though it's dented, if the hubcap was really my hubcap or was it my friend's hubcap down the road, I actually think I might feel that that was slightly unfair, and that might be considered to be a form of a deal. And there is no disgrace in acknowledging the limitations that are possible. There is no disgrace for any of us in acknowledging that we cannot return to where we were in this country in the 1800s. But there is disgrace in pretending, and I don't think anyone is in this House, that it's over, that it's settled, that it's done. We will not have settlement in the deepest sense, settlement inside our hearts and our minds, until we have learned the true history of this country, and then all parties respect the journey of Waitaha. All parties, not just those. The Crown and Māori cannot do it by themselves. It has to be the public of Aotearoa who come on board, and there is a role for the Crown in education as well as in negotiating these arrangements. So with those words, I'd like to acknowledge the positive achievement of the Waitaha Settlement Bill, and we look forward to supporting the third reading.
The Honourable Tau Henry.
Mr. Speaker, I want to